everybody, and welcome along to a very dark circuit of the Americas. It's John Hindhaugh and Bruce Jones in the booth for you here for night practice. We've set the grid. We'll give you more details about that if you weren't with us earlier on and missed our qualifying show. It was an absolute cracker. We've got the night practice coming up, and it's all live here from trackside at COTA. So third position in TCE went to the Volkswagen of the 110 team. It was the two Cupras that fought it out at the top of the timing chart, with the number 129 taking the second place. But a bit of a shock at the top of the timing in TCE. Not one of the TCE cars. It was, in fact, the Lamera Cup number 238, the perfectly proportioned coupe that takes pole position in that part of the race on Saturday. And the team were reasonably delighted about that. The Lamera Cup French car, of course, doing a cracking job. When the cars rolled out for the GT qualifying, wow, the massed ranks of Mercedes-Benz had been looking really strong before in the final qualifying session. Third position to the number 3, Black Falcon, the dark red machine, hammering its way across the curbs, but not as much as its team car, the bright green number 2. Even Jerome Blakemolin plugged into the car at the end. Not good enough to get pole position. So was the Mercedes-Benz on pole? No, it wasn't. It was the sonorous note of the V12 6-litre Aston Martin from R Motorsport who took pole position with a stunning set of laps. Particularly good in the first sector with that huge rear wing, but still quick down the tubes. Aston Martin cleared pole position for the 2018 24-hour GT series here at COTA, and it was a brilliant run. 3 sets of tyres used to get it done, but get it done they absolutely did. Congratulations to the whole team. Let's head down to the pit lane where the green lights have just come on, and Joe Bradley is there for us with Seb, our cameraman.
Circuit of Americas, and that's going to change things massively out on circuit. Night practice is all about a voyage of discovery. The track that you're out on this afternoon is going to look completely different. And I'm just being bustled out the way. That's how live we are down here in the pit lane. Just being bustled out the way for the Glickenhaus team to get that car out. This car that challenged for pole position but just didn't quite have enough. The Glickenhaus, a one-off prototype, of which we have 2, so there's 2 one-off prototypes.
It's a completely unique car, apart from the teammate, which is identical. Well done, Mr. Bradley. Fantastic stuff.
There is a story that's emanating from this pit, which I'm going to get to the bottom of, so I'll come back to you when I've got Frank Maillot.
Thank you very much. That's the 704 Lightspeed car that is running in A6. There's an A6 Pro version as well. What Joe is trying to say there, Bruce Jones, who's alongside me in our broadcast centre here at COTA, is that those cars are built. There are road cars, not very many of them, but it employs the idea of prototype design, but within a framework of rules which, if there were enough of them built, would see it be legal for GT3.
Oh, entirely so. But if you were designing a racing car, a child was designing a racing car that looks great, that looks
evil, wicked, mean and nasty.
That's it.
Yeah.
And being unique, as we said, it was so good they built at least 2, and 2 of them are here. But what really strikes me, John, as the cars go out, this is my first visit to the Circuit of the Americas.
I can't believe you've not been here before.
Yeah, well, I was trying very hard last year. Well, we all have tracks we've missed. I'm very short on American tracks. I walked around a lot of it this afternoon. Looked fabulous in the autumnal sunshine, but of course it gets dark very, very quickly. And some tracks are dark in the dark and others aren't. This very much is, and I guess right there towards the tail end of the circuit, in fact, they just come out to about turn 15, 16 there. That's beneath the tower. You can see the Star Spangled Banner on painted outside the curves, there at least a bit of light, but down the far end at turn 11 at that hairpin, you must be thinking, am I ever going to see light again? It's so dark.
Yeah.
And that's what this session is for. We've had the qualifying, we've had all the running through the day, and now it's finding what you can see and where you can see it out around the circuit. And you were talking earlier about having to identify some turning in points and some braking points. Work that out in the day because it's very different at night.
What you've got to do, and I was fortunate enough to drive in this race last year, and you know, thanks again to the guys at Aston Martin for letting me have a go at this race last year. First of all, you need good lights. Well, LED lights are absolutely unbelievable nowadays. I didn't realise how much difference they could make. I've raced with them at Anglesey a couple of years ago in the Race of Remembrance, and we've already got a problem for the 890 Paul Barnard Jr. in the Creventic Motorsports Mercedes. This is the GT4 Mercedes-Benz, and he is, oh my goodness, nearly gets picked up by, I think that was Yelmer Berman, wasn't it, in the Black Falcon car.
So where on the circuit is that, John? It's somewhere where they have to be committed coming through a right-hander. Is that at the bottom of turn 2 before they get to the 3, 4, 5 sweepers? No, it's a tighter corner at the end.
It's just before the final corner. He hasn't quite made it into the pit lane. I think that's where he is. There's a slight uphill run into the final corner. Through goes the Lamera through turn 20.
Well, that's already a problem, because if he doesn't get it back, all the drivers need to get their night laps in, and this is their first opportunity to do it. And if within, what, the first 2 minutes of the 2-3 minutes of the programme, the car has come to a halt, that is a big problem. A very tail-out moment we're just spotting there. So the drivers actually, not just the turn-in points, also where the curbs are on the exit they've got to find in the dark.
Pit exit on the screen. It is the pit exit. It is the pit exit. He's got halfway up the hill, and
got the lights on now.
The lights now have come on. Am I right? Yes, it is pit exit, not pit not pit entry. My apologies. Yellow flags waving on the start-finish line. He's doing well to hold that car there. Really, what he needs to do, and I know this is not the greatest thing, put his lights on, kick it out of gear, roll it back down into the pit lane. Because at the moment, if he can't get it going forwards, he's very, very exposed at that point of the circuit. Coming out at the moment is the number 2 Black Falcon car, just been out of the coming out of the pits, and has to go across the blend line. And see, this is the problem, Bruce. It's not so much the fact of where the 890, the GT4 car is parked, but cars coming out of the pit lane have to go out onto the track in a very fast part of the track. And if there's 2 or 3 wide coming up the start-finish line, then you've got a bit of problem there. Yeah,
and when you go past the end of a pit board, it's not made for you having immediate sight to the track side of it, therefore to drivers right. We've got cars coming up, but luckily they're hard over on the right-hand side of the circuit as they go up the slope towards turn 1. Again, treated to the scary view through the windscreen of the stationary 890 Mercedes. That was the one that was very late out this morning, and certainly Joe Bradley thought they'd even just almost brought it in. He thought it was a spare car parked at beyond the back of the garage. They brought it in and got it going, but clearly a little electrical problem is causing a rather big problem.
It's got all kinds of alarms going off on the dashboard in front of him.
Christmas on board the car. The Christmas lights are flashing. Now we've got cars going the other side of him, coming out of pit exit, but at least the lights are on that stricken Mercedes.
Paul Barnard Jr. absolutely stranded there. Let's get a quick update from Joe Bradley in the pit lane, who can give us an idea of track temperature here at just after 7 o'clock in the evening local time. Joe?
Well, I was about to do that for you, but that man there, standing at the back of the garage behind me, is Frank Maillot. He was standing there. Nothing was happening, but the number 49, that's his car, has gone out. It's going to come straight back in, and he's going to jump in. So he said, "Sorry, I can't talk to you. I'm about to go out." So that tells me that the Glickenhaus team, they're just going to cycle through their drivers and get them their obligatory 2 laps. Talking to the Hankook tyre engineers, we've got a track temperature of 14. That's a drop of 10 degrees. That's in our money, of course. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but a drop of 10 degrees. Now, that's significant. And 60 Fahrenheit, I've just worked that out in my head. One of the engineers was telling me that because of the cooler air, to the extent that we're going to see here at COTA, that cooler air is so thick, it's going to affect the aerodynamics on the car to the point where it's going to give the cars more downforce. So during the race, we might have to see things like ride height changes. All right, tyre pressures, definitely. But ride height changes? That's how tricky it's going to be this weekend. Fantastic.
Thank you, Joe. Joe Bradley down there in the pit lane for us. Shea Adam is the other voice you'll hear down there in the pits for this night practice session. We're live from COTA across the Radio Show Limited network, radiolemont.com, and of course on the 24H series website. Let's say good evening to Shea Adam, who's been released from my company in the broadcast centre. Hi, Shea.
Hello, John. I wouldn't say released so much as temporarily set free. There's a car that has not yet been released from its garage bay that we expected to be very strong in qualifying and then came up a little bit short. That is the Windward Racing number 84 Mercedes. You'll notice that it hasn't yet gone out. They've had a day. They broke a shock in the final practice session, thrashed to try and get the car fixed to go out in qualifying, sent Russell out, gave Bryce some time, they put Christian Hohnadel in the car, and then they broke another shock. So Indy Dancia has not had very many laps around Circuit of the Americas. They have been thrashing through the entire dinner break to once again change the shock. Just having completed the work, are they going to put Indy Dancia in first? No, he's going to be the last driver in the car for this night session. But they are going to do their minimum laps and put their Mercedes to bed because they know how important this race is to both of their Texas-born American drivers.
Thank you, Shea. Status of Paul Barnett Jr.'s stricken Mercedes-Benz GT4. This is the 890 Rentec Motorsports car. He has just let the brake off and started rolling back in the pit lane, but he's got some cover there as a circuit vehicle with flashing lights is just dropping back behind him. That's really smart marshalling there. No need to stop the session. No need to even go to a code 60. He hasn't got any power, Bruce, so he's not reversing in the pit lane under his own power, but once he gets down there, the guys can push him back out the way and get him back to the garage.
And not to put too fine a point on it, with such a steep ascent up to turn one, it's not, you can't really push the car forward off the track to the side. Sensible marshalling there, very well done. Meanwhile, out on track, Black Falcon Mercedes going to the top. Number 3 has just been joined by number 2, Jelmer Berman ahead of Hubert Hout. Not enormously fast times, but again, as we said, it's very dark, track conditions very much cooler, air conditions, temperature dropping fast, but it's Jelmer Berman from Hubert Hart and then Max Edelhoff in the car collection Audi. Really expect more Audis to come and play, but of course they're just going to the point where they go to the LMS Evo. We've just seen those coming out onto track in testing so far. I'm sure there'll be a phalanx of those next year. But Mercedes looking very strong, not just in terms of pace, but clearly here in terms of numbers. Of course, they didn't take the pole position.
Was that turn up, Bruce, in your money? Do you think the guys at Art Motorsports stole that one from Mercedes? Mercedes won't be happy with that. They've got a big event here next week.
Yeah, they're preparing hard around the paddock, making all these big screens to cover the back of the pit garages. It's clearly a huge corporate event, and I walked through their paddock of cars, all different shapes and sizes. Mercedes, all stickered up, ready for next week. There must be at least 60 of them kept in a paddock at the back part of the circuit. But no, it's not, because the Aston Martin in the Blancpain series where it's been racing this year, the Blancpain GT series, has taken a whole host of pole positions. You know, when you've got drivers the like of Nicky Tim hopping on board, it ain't going to be going slowly in the races either. But it does seem very, very good indeed through qualifying positions. But then again, it's a 24-hour race. Yes, our race is split into 2 parts. Qualifying isn't that important, but when you're the lone Aston Martin to put one over the Mercedes, it's a feather in the hat. And certainly when the Black Falcon cars have been going so well, the Pro Sport performance car looking so strong, it was quite a challenge, and they really rose to it.
And of course, even better for Aston Martin, as they've got a formal agreement now with AMG. Back to Joe Bradley down in the pit lane.
Yeah, I've managed to find Alex Cornier, who's unfortunately standing beside the 24 SPS Mercedes. Alex, a lot of work going on the fuel tank area of this Mercedes. Can you explain what the problem is?
Well, it seems that we have, as I said before, it seems that we have a leak on the tank that we have to check right now, because out of the session we're not allowed to go to the fuel station. So we have to check it right now. So it's better to check it now than during the race, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose that's what practice is for. Now, you didn't qualify the car. Your teammate, Antonin Borger, qualified the car, but his English isn't very good. So I'm going to ask you... Is he I think he's playing with us. Qualifying was pretty good. You guys were competitive.
It was a hard one. I mean, the front row were going really, really hard, and Antonin did really a great job. So we have a couple of laps deleted due to track limit, but I mean that's part of the game. And but he did really well. It's just the fact that in the front was really, really strong.
And race, obviously, a lot different than just one lap going fast. You've got to go very fast over 24 hours. You guys are in a pretty strong position for the race, do you think?
I mean, it's always the same thing. I mean, the thing is going fast is doing the less mistake as possible. So the race is very long. It's always the same question about the traffic, to deal with the traffic, the slower traffic, to be sure that not taking stupid risk that doesn't worth it. And we'll see where we end up after 24. I mean, I don't think right now we can have any, we have some wishes. No, but it's just always a question of we don't know exactly what it's end up, where it ends up, you know.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. Thank you.
Joe Bradley down in the pit lane. The 890 Aston being towed, excuse me, the 890 Mercedes GT4 being towed back to its garage. It's the Rentec Motorsports car that was stuck leaving the pit lane, and looks like what it looked like to me is the engine died as soon as he came off the pit lane limiter. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do pit lane limiters here. You can have a pit lane button, or some of the teams replace the pit lane button with a 60 button instead for the code 60. And then what you do is you program first gear to effectively be your pit lane speed limiter. So maybe, I'm not sure which way they do it on that GT4. There are some very clever cars that have more than one speed limiter button as well, but yeah, that relies on your driver hitting the right one at the right time.
And therein lies a point, John. It's dark, you can't see the gauges and the buttons as well as you can in daylight. There is every possibility of driver malfunction. They're pressing the wrong button, and definitely with that steep exit from the pit lane, that probably doesn't help either.
It looks to me though as when he's come off the limiter or when he's changed up or whatever, the engine's just died on him, and he's kept it in gear so it didn't roll back, and he was sort of going through the reset ritual with the guys on the radio, but nothing really happened. I have to say that my hat is off to all of these drivers, and the amount of buttons and information inside even a GT4 car nowadays. I managed to knock a button on the Aston last year, which is not, that's quite an old GT4 car now, and it took off my Delta screen and put on another information screen. It took me 20 minutes to work out how to get it back whilst I was driving around.
You don't want to be going around with Tom and Jerry on your information screen. Actually, you could. But, I mean, it's a point. We've talked about how it's super dark out around the lap of the Circuit of the Americas. So finding your cornering points, your braking points, your turning points. But if you cannot see, you see lights by your switchgear, but you cannot identify which is which, you're not familiar with the car, any number of things can go wrong. So it's not something you'd always think about, but you've almost got to get in the car the night before, turn the garage lights off, and try and do it blind, find the switches.
And also you don't want anything to be too bright because it kills your night vision around here. Joe Bradley is down in the pit lane and has this report.
Well, in with the chance of another championship is the 131. That's the Hofer Racing with Bonk Motorsport BMW. On the pole position for the Cup 1 class, Gustav Engelringer will share the car with Michael Schrei and some others. Gustav, you guys, I suppose, starting from the Cup 1 pole, you must have a lot of pressure on you now, thinking of not just the race, but another championship.
Yeah, of course. So we have all our stuff in the hand. So we can win the championship, but also other teams are in a good position. We will do our best as usual, and we will see at the end if we lose or we succeed.
I suppose going into such a long race, it's all about just the next stint and the next stint.
As usual, the 24-hour race is 24 hours long, so it's a long race, and we cannot say what happens. So nobody knows. So we will do our best as usual, and hope it works for us.
Gustav, you are the only disabled driver in the race. I don't think I've asked you about the adapted car that you drive. Could you describe the controls that you have at your disposal in the BMW?
Yes, of course. I have on the right-hand side, with the right hand, I push the lever down for throttle and in forward for brake. The left hand is on the steering wheel, the left hand steers, and the right hand is brake, throttle and shifting.
All right, so the right hand's doing two things, and the left hand just keeps the car on the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for your teammates, they just have a pedals and a gear shift?
No, they drive normal with the pedals, so it does not disturb. My hand controls are on the right side and on the right knee. So they're used to that, but they are not disturbed from my system.
Yeah, it clearly goes very well because you guys win. So, all right, 2018 isn't quite over yet, but you've had a very good season, European Championships. What's been the highlight so far?
It's hard to say. It was an unbelievable season, definitely. We won each single race in our class. The whole year was a highlight. It's one highlight, so nothing special.
Favorite track?
Favorite track, Portimao, very good track, and COTA. Also this track is very special, I like it very much.
Great stuff. Thanks for talking to us, Gustav. Best of luck for the race.
Thank you.
You know, there's a lot of things that are wrong with motorsport, but the inclusivity side of it, Bruce, we don't shout enough about it. We just take it for granted now. You know, you think of people like Fred Saucier, you think about down through the years, the drivers, you know, Paul Lord-Drayson, you know, only one eye, Gustav there, other drivers who's come through. We've got a guy called Michael Johnson, who's winning races in TCR in IMSA at the moment, who's paralysed from the chest down after a motorcycle accident, and competing on absolutely even terms with the best of the best of the best of the best.
Entirely so, and increasing numbers of disabled drivers, and that is the heartwarming story. And what I love is actually when you discover a driver that you've known has raced for a while, but you didn't know much about them, you discover after you've looked at their racing record that they have a problem, a physical problem, and it's never detracted from their racing. No. And of course, all the switchgear, we just heard Gustav Engeljaringer talking Joe through how his works and the fact it doesn't affect the other drivers. You can imagine it's quite easy to set up a car that's perfect for a driver who has disabilities, but the fact he has to share it, he's sharing it with 4 other drivers who have to hop in and out of that car, not disturb his controls. It's not a factor. They are super competitive, leading the championship, European title already in the bag, and here's Gustav going around the world, racing at circuits he absolutely loves, and obviously, of course, we have a bit of a rotation there.
That is
the Audis. It's the
152 Audi. That was a moment or two ago. That's Harold Pettit. Yeah, 6th position in TCR. Was 5th at the time, and that was at the first corner. Honestly, I do think motorsport should take a little collective bow for the inclusivity side of things, and keeps looking for engineering solutions. It's not easy to. You know, it's not like you can go and buy a kit of parts off a shelf, because all of these drivers who need special equipment, they're all slightly different, and they all need something unique to themselves. And you know, that engineering solutions could only come from motorsport, and how it's integrated into quite complicated racing cars nowadays as well.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only other sport that I can think of where you have disabled people who compete on an absolutely regular basis is sailing, but some of it is so incredibly physical you cannot believe. You can imagine someone sitting in a cockpit with the adaptive controls, as long as they've got strength in their arms, shoulders and necks and central torso, but sailing a boat, you know, some of these people sailing single-handed around the world. I could not do it in a month of Sundays, but more please. So any engineering ideas that people can work out these days that can facilitate it are ever more welcome.
Ben Keating out at the moment in the number 2 Black Falcon Mercedes-Benz has just done a 2:11.5, which was the fastest lap of the session, and is about to improve on that. Ben's name on the timing screen at the moment, and Ben knows this place like the back of his hand. Bruce was talking earlier on about how dark it is. It's exceptionally dark at the moment. Darren Jorgensen behind the wheel of the number 113, the RHC Jorgensen Strom BMW. And one of the things that you have to do is pick your braking markers with something you can see in the dark.
Now, looking at a timing screen to our right, John, it is chock full of drivers having exceeded that track limit. I hadn't, because I wasn't in here during qualifying. Seriously, it was 2 columns with about 30 entries on either side. Each one of those was a track. We haven't had a single one in the dark yet. Yes, we've had a car spinning, but that wasn't an intentional driving over the track limits. Maybe they're getting away because it is so dark, and the people inspecting around the circuit. But I think right now everyone is being very careful indeed, wary of the fact they've got to stay within track limits. They've also got to hand over to their teammates. They do all have to do those number of laps, and we can see in the pit lane yet another driver change. So that driver's done his night laps.
That's the 129 Seat that's just come into the pit lane. Kari-Pekka Laaksonen. has just handed that car over to, I think, is that Andy Burry getting in there?
I didn't
with the
quite
dark
see.
helmet?
But it was
You're
good.
the man
It
for
was good
helmet.
that you went straight in with the driver with the hardest names to pronounce.
Thank you.
It's much easier for Ollie Kangas or Antti Burri or his other teammates.
Joe Bradley's just said in my ears he thinks it might be Ollie that's got in that car. Those Cupras are very, very purposeful looking cars. I know Bas Kooten was on social media the other day. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 85.9 or 89.5 thousand euros for a Cupra ready to go on the key.
And you look at the races they can come and play, and for the people who buy those, there's a lot of track time. Just take this weekend alone. They could have been doing track sessions yesterday if they so chose, this morning, practice, qualifying, more practice and 24 hours of racing, and they run and they run and they run. And certainly if Bas Kooten's running them, they very much do that. He's a very busy man at a lot of races. I think he was looking after, well, a whole cluster of them at the Spa 12 Hours, which was the previous round of the Creventic series, but arrive and drive, and it certainly works.
Go down to another Cupra driver in just a moment or two's time. Ben Keating, if it is he in the car, is about to come across the line and improve on the 2:11.427, I think. Maybe not. The theoretical time for that, if they put all of their best sector together, is a 2:10.5, which is not exactly hanging around even in the dark, but especially in the dark here, as it is very dark on the far side of the circuit. Robert Renard has brought the Herberth Motorsport number 911 Porsche into second position. They qualified towards the middle of the top 10 earlier on today in A6 Pro. Sent down to Joe Bradley, who's with Geese Betham.
And also Harry Hilders. Come here, guys. I've just mentioned you two. Geese, Harry's just ran off. Your car this weekend, you're sharing it with another driver.
Yeah, we found a new friend of ours from Amsterdam who used to drive quite a lot. He's been doing classical car races, and we said, well, it's time to join the big man. So he said, okay, then we go to the States, and we're going. And it's his first race, and he's doing quite well. I mean, it's amazing how he handles the car and how fast he picks up, because I think now he's on the same lap times as we are.
Wow, well, that's completely different driving a classic car which slides around, and that's a very grippy TCR Cupra.
Yeah, so we are amazed. We are very proud of his achievements, what he's done so far. So we've got high expectations for coming for tomorrow, huh?
Always. Now I just noticed if CJ, it's gone.
It's gone.
You just bedding brakes in. You've changed the discs and the pads.
Yeah.
Just bedding them in.
Yes, that's the idea. We're going to do it 3 times to bring it up to race. So if we go out, brakes ready for the race, and then we have them in racing condition.
Yeah, great. And what's going on with Bas Kooten? Panic. He's usually manager.
Yeah, well, he's got a memo. He's been demoted. We're going to change the name as well. It's going to be COTA Racing.
Excellent. Great audiences as ever. She's best him now, the 175. A team that love their racing.
Oh, do they ever.
They are the essence of Creventic racing.
Yeah,
and as
I agree.
I understand, they have done every single event since the series began. That's a lot of circuits they've racked around, but it's the sheer humour of Geese in particular and Harry. And I was just looking at the racing record of Roland Verman, who's joined them. He was competing as long ago as 2001 in the Porsche Super Cup occasional races. Did that through the...
When you could do that.
Exactly, when you could, when it was sort of, drop in the ones you like. Did Spa 24 Hours back in 2008, but I like the description of historic races, classical car racing.
Yeah.
I think that's how it should be renamed from now on.
The purple is out, and it is a code 60 situation, and we've got a yellow flag at
Turn
18. And we have got circuit vehicles going out at the moment. I'll ask Shea Adam this. Is there a bit of precipitation in the air, Shea? Not sure. 2 Audi TTs have just pulled out of the pit lane, and we've got circuit vehicles scrambling at the moment, with the Circuit of the Americas pickup trucks moving as well, which you've got more lights on them than Blackpool Pier, which is fantastic. Is there a bit of rain in the air down there, Cher?
No, it's just getting colder as the night goes on, which is what we were expecting it to happen. Would you like an update about a car that caused us a bit of strife earlier on, John?
That'd be great.
The number 890 Mercedes from Rentec has been sitting in the garage since it was brought back. At one point, the phrase, "let's just fire her up and see what happens," was used. They did that. They tried to roll the car out of the garage and into the fast lane, and it just wouldn't go. So now it's back in the garage area, and they're continuing to work on it, but they're not entirely sure what the problem is yet. So our pole-sitting GT4 car right now in a bit of strife, but calm faces prevail in this garage.
Okay. Seems reasonable then that they should be continuing to try and fix that. Sounds like they've got some kind of sensor or other problem that means that the car will tick over and run. But I'm going back to the pit lane speed limiter thing. As soon as they take the pit lane speed limiter off, it's causing an issue. All kinds of circuit vehicles on the track at the moment, and we've now got the message through that this is a night practice Code 60 exercise. So there isn't anybody in trouble out there in the darkness, but this is just a scramble of safety vehicles. And what will have happened is that the circuit marshals, the circuit workers will have been given a scenario where there is an incident at X corner that requires a fire tender, which is what is scrambling around the track at the moment, and course intervention. And they are heading to it in the darkness to give the drivers the opportunity, who are driving around at 60 kilometers an hour at the moment, to see what happens on the track with the lit signs. We've got a couple of Audi TT circuit vehicles pulled over to the side of the road on the back straight between turns 11 and 12 on drivers left. The fire tender's just gone past them. But all of this is just getting people used to seeing the illuminated boards around the track, Bruce, and keeping to 60 kilometres an hour if they don't have their own speed limiter.
Yeah, and for those who are new to Creventic, that's a very, very useful practice indeed. Of course, we were slightly thrown by the message on the timing screen saying yellow flag at turn 18.
Yeah.
We don't think there's anything there at all. But when I saw the cars exiting from the pits, the Audi safety car, I was fairly sure from the right-hand side of the track, from driver's point of view, was where this fire tender came from.
Correct.
It is correct, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a station that is just at the bottom of the hill on driver's right, which has an intervention vehicle and one of the I think it's Nissan safety trucks that they have here, the big V8s. And
so from driver's point of view, that's the opposite side to the pit lane, just
correct.
to make that plain, which is an unusual situation. So that in itself is worth knowing for all these drivers.
Yeah, absolutely right. There is an exit point from the circuit there to get directly out should you need to do so, and it also means that they can scramble additional vehicles around the outside circuit roads and then join in there without having to go through the pit lane in case there's an issue within the pit lane, of course.
Well, the more options the better, but obviously the crews all need to know it. So let's just run you down the timing sheets. It's still Ben Keating in the pits now, but the number 2 Black Falcon Mercedes, top of the time charts, did manage to complete that lap, got into the 2-minute 10s, 2-minute 10.686 second, which puts about 1.1 seconds clear. Well, it's now listed as Daniel Alleman, but it was Robert Renauer who set the time in the Herbert Porsche. And the second of the Black Falcon cars, the red one. It's the green one at the top of the timesheets with Ben Keating. Now Brett Curtis, fellow American, is out in the number 3 Mercedes. And best of the Glickenhauses is actually in 5th place. That's Thomas Much, but he's in the pits at the moment. And I've just jumped straight past the car that's 4th fastest, because that's the one and only Ferrari, the 488 GT3. HB Racing, we see them competing in Europe very heavily, in the ADAC GT Masters principally, but a whole new crew of drivers this weekend. And I think the star in that car, Martin Berry, is listed at the moment, but Mike Headland, who dropped in and did such a good job earlier today, obviously knows these tracks very well indeed.
Doughty competitor is Mike.
So.
He's brilliant,
yeah.
And I'm so pleased he's doing this race. He's been wanting to do it for a little while. He is a very considered individual. He has some fairly strong views about how motor racing should be run. Sometimes we don't agree, and I've spent many a happy hour, and I say this without any hint of irony, many a happy hour in a Twitter backwards and forwards in some airport lounge somewhere around the world where I've been coming back from a raid, having a really sensible discussion from two diametrically opposite points of view with Mike. It never ever denigrates into bad language or flaming or anything like that. He's a man who can argue his corner, but has the respect of anybody who disagrees with him to take time to explain. And, you know, he's brilliant. I really like Mike, and I'm delighted to see him here. And by the way, he's a pretty decent peddler as well.
But also, he doesn't just race in North America. He was competed, was it at Fuji last year in the WEC? He raced the Gulf Racing Porsche. He dots around. So what happens? You say something contentious, get on an aeroplane, and he's got a contentious reply for when you land. Is that how it works?
Well, it's normally when I'm sitting waiting for a plane, actually, and I'm sort of going through, having a look on the phone to see what's going on. That car just into the pits now, the number 41, 488. Beautiful, beautiful car. And still with the... great noise from the Ferrari. Not quite as it used to be, but I still enjoy these cars. And the shape that finally Ferrari have got a mid-engine car that looks as it should for me. I've not always been a big fan of mid-engine Ferraris. 360, yeah, kind of okay. But the 488, I really do like. I'm a front engine Ferrari.
They tightened up the packaging, didn't they?
Yeah,
I
really
reckon about once a decade, I'm not denigrating Ferraris, they get one that just looks spot on.
Yeah.
And then the next one might be slightly too bulbous to my eyes or whatever, but the 488, as soon as it came out, it just tightened everything up and really has been a very successful car. Of course, we're missing the Scuderia Praha Ferrari, the 488 that's been so strong in this championship over the years, but I'm sure we'll see them back again once we kick off the 2019 series. Not that long from now, really. Just have to get to January, and there it will be, the Dubai 24 hours. So here at the Circuit of the Americas, still the Code 60, a nighttime practice for Code 60. In this, the 90-minute night practice session. And I think all the drivers out on the circuit will have run past these rescue vehicles at the various points, some stationary, others moving slowly back to build up the scenario that they may face during the night sessions, not just tomorrow, but the day after as well. Of course, our race is split in two, John.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives us it's a bit more civilised. Gives us a chance to go and get some proper shut-eye, and for all the track workers and officials to get some time out as well. Hello to McLaren Philadelphia, who've tweeted in at RSL_studio. He said earlier on today in qualifying, 2 minutes 16 in a GT4 class car, absolutely bonkers, but we do need a McLaren in the fight. Well, if you fancy McLaren, I know that
we'd love to see one.
McLaren at Philadelphia have got a race car. Hello to Peter Barron, who's at the circuit this weekend as well, working as a barista, he says, this weekend. I'm not quite certain that that's true, Peter, but good to know that you're on site. Jeff Rosa has tweeted at RSL_studio. He says, I'm watching the night practice here at COTA after that scorching qualifying session. Question: the Lamara Cup car bears, to my eyes, strikingly similar silhouette and resemblance to the Sin R1. Is there any correlation or relation?
None whatsoever.
He's right, though. He's not.
No, it does. It's a shrunken version of a Sin, and sort of the really lumpy, bumpy parts have been toned down. In fact, it's a great-looking car, but the Sin predominantly races in an all-white livery, so its shape doesn't look as softened as it would be by the race livery. Very attractive race liveries on the two Lamara Cup cars here. But
I like those Lamara Cup cars. I think I keep saying they're perfectly proportioned because they are. It's quite a short car, and it's difficult to get a short the curves right on a short car. Very little overhangs, but it works for me, that shape.
What I like, you walk down the pit lane, you look in their pit garage, and there's a big graphic of the car on the wall, and it just has about the 10 key points, sort of engine in here. It just makes it very obvious, but the French have a long history of having small GT-esque small sports prototype cars. I mean, it goes right back to the 908 Spider Cup races back 20 years ago. One of the drivers who won that is here. He also won Le Mans for Peugeot in 1993 is Christophe Bouchou.
Yes.
Really late entry, caught all of us on the hop, and he's in one of those two Lamara Cup cars, and you look down his pedigree. I was just having a quick squiz after qualifying. It's championship title after championship title. I think he had 3 French Porsche Cup titles in a row, but that win stood him in such good stead at Le Mans with Eric Ellery and Jeff Brabham back in 1993.
And I know it has the Lamara Cup cars have the straight 5 Ford engine in that car out of the Focus RS. There is, to me, if Ford were to produce a Ford Puma for now, it could very well look like that. It has that very cut-off rear end and the little round tail lights, which I think the Ford Puma shared, if I'm right, with a Scorpion tank or something ridiculous like that underneath the back end of the car. It was something bizarre, but there's something that is just right about that car. I need to find out more about it and have a closer look this weekend.
Yeah, but again, it's part of the rich mix, and again, doing things in a very, very different fashion to anyone else. But that is a very French way with small sports cars, and it runs as a very successful series in France. And I dare say a lot of the drivers, they're now used to French circuits. They're looking further afield, and that's why they're here, coming out to play.
Well, and credit again to Creventic for basically saying, come one, come all, we'll find a way to fit you in and find a class to put you in that you can be competitive in, but not walk away from the opposition. Just everything that Creventic do for me at this level of racing is for the guys who turn up, who put their money down, bring their cars, and support it by coming to race.
Yeah, and what Creventic is very aware is the fact that some of these cars will come in and people look at them and go, actually, I'd like to do that, and suddenly they could have 4 or 5 of them, have a class of their own, and they can go racing and have a full championship run through the course of the season. But it's all about balancing the performance and giving them someone of equal performance to go racing again. And what I like is Creventic thinks on its feet, reacts very, very quickly, and as a consequence, you don't have to wait until next season for it to be sorted. It will be sorted probably by the next race. So the Code 60 period has come to an end. We're back up to speed again, much more noise out around the circuit. And don't forget, the time is just over 50 minutes this session remaining. So for a lot of these crews, they didn't get as many drivers cycled through doing the night practice laps as they would have liked, because the slower laps behind the Code 60. But now we're back to full practice conditions. Go as fast as you like, ladies and gentlemen. They will start to scroll through them again.
Now, one of the great battles in qualifying was in the Porsche 991 Cup class, which has a couple of teams who are well known to each other as really staunch competitors in the IMSA Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge USA, and well, it was the fight between Wright Motorsport and JDX that really kept us on the edge of our seats. JDX nicked it at the end. Joe Bradley is down with the team.
Right, let's get this thing sorted before we go into the weekend. This is Mark. I've been pronouncing that, Mark. Kvam.
Yeah,
you said I was right, but you pronounce it
Kwame. So us US guys can't say Kvam, so we say Kwame. So that's how it's like W. That's how we pronounce it here in the United States.
Well, we're in your home country, Mark, so we're going to say Kwam, okay?
Thank you, Kwame.
Mark Kwame. So, Mark, you're in the number 74 GDX Porsche. Yes. We had a bit of a chat off air about the team lineup.
Yep.
Take us through the team lineup. It's a pretty strong one.
Yeah, so we race all together in GT3 Cup here in the U.S., and we actually have the champion of the season, Trenton Estap, as our lead driver. And I like to say he's the young dude, and we got 3 old guys. So we got the 3 Masters. We got the Masters champion, number 3. Unfortunately, I was number 4. But we're having a lot of fun.
Now, that is what we've seen, what we normally see in the 991 Cup class is a very, very strong race. It's always very competitive. I suppose going into a race as long as this, you've just got to do everything right.
You really have to do everything right. It's going to be really interesting. They put a restrictor on us because down the straightaways, we'd be just as fast as the GT3 cars. They're very, very fast cars, and they allow us to get some more aero as well. So it's very interesting.
Mark, we're going to have to step out of the way because there's a car coming in behind us. I wanted to, we're going to have to come this way as well. Yeah. Right, let's swap over. I was going to ask you the changes on the car to make it a 24-hour endurance car.
Yes.
Into what is a Cup car. Are there any major changes that you guys have had to do?
Yeah, actually, we make quite a few. One was the brakes. You have to do endurance brakes, and that's one of our concerns for the weekend because we don't know exactly how long they're going to last. Are they going to last 6 hours? Are they going to last 8 hours, 9 hours? The one interesting thing about the Cup car is it's got a big gas tank, so we could go 90 minutes in one stint. And for us old guys, that's a long time.
That was my next question. Can you guys go 90 minutes?
I don't know if we can, but it's, and then we also have the front dive planes, which are great. And I gotta say, a handout for the Hankook tires. They're really good. I mean, we're having a good time with them.
And in the Masters Series, you drive with ABS. Have you been able to bring the ABS with you for this?
Yes, yeah, we have the ABS as well. So those are the major changes. It's been quite simple, actually.
And the next question, simply, are you having fun? That's the main thing, isn't it?
I'm having fun. Yeah, I'm having a great
I'm from the north.
I know. I'm having a great time. I got to tell you, I raced the 24 Hours at Daytona. I race a lot of different racing, and this is the most fun I've ever had. I mean, the Creventic race, they do a great job, and we're happy to be here and have some fun.
We're happy to have you. Thanks, Mark. Great stuff.
Mark Kavami, who was running at Sebring last weekend in a GT. He was running at Sebring last weekend in a GT3 car, if I remember rightly. So I misremembered that. She'll tell me if I got that wrong. He was doing some historic racing at Daytona as well, I think. So he's been a busy bloke the last few weeks. It's John Heinhoff and Bruce Jones in the booth with Shea Adam and Joe Bradley. Joe about to be swapped out for Nick Damon, who's just disappeared from my right-hand side. Not in a sort of Harry Potter way. He did actually get up and walk out, I think, but unless somebody cast an invisibility spell on him. Coming down to around about half distance with 46 minutes still to go. Jerome Blake-Mullen has been plugged in to the Black Falcon number 2 Mercedes AMG GT3 and immediately gets down to a 209.468. He is a force of nature.
He is, but something really surprised me during the week. Constantly putting stuff up on Twitter and Instagram. This is his last race of the year, but it's not even December. Jerome, who normally fits in about 80 race weekends per year, is obviously getting a bit soft in his old age, but he is absolutely a phenomenon. I mean, apart from the fact he'll get out of the car after the longest stint he could possibly do, look almost as fresh as a daisy, but there's always a smile on that man's face, and no wonder Ben Keating loves sharing with him.
Somebody said to me a couple of 3 years ago, Blake-Mullen, I can't believe this. Why is he not a works driver? And I said, well, first of all, I bet he doesn't want to take the pay cut. And second of all, it would mean he was doing less races. And he doesn't want to do less races. He wants to be sitting with his backside in a race car, not testing, not doing PR, just going out there and racing. And whether it's GT Masters, whether it's here in IMSA in the US, whether it's doing whatever it is in the state back in Europe, he just wants to be racing.
Yeah, I honestly think the only thing that will encourage him to do fewer races will be he's got 3 young sons who are probably, I think, maybe 5, and I think the twins are about 2, to spend more time with him in Monaco. Because let's face it, John, you clock up a lot of air miles, but you're nothing in comparison to your own.
No.
But then again, that family, he's second generation racer. Yeah. Sebastian, his brother, races. Of course, his father, Michael, raced and I think probably still races now. I don't think they know how to say no to a racing car.
You may be right. By the way, the 2 991s that we were talking about, these are the 991 Gen 2 Cup cars. We do have a Gen 1 Cup car as well. That's in SP2 for Speed Lover, the 78, one of the stalwarts of Creventic racing in the 24-hour series, powered by Hankook. That is in the race as well. And that at the moment is down in 31st position, 4th in SP2. But the 2 Gen 2 cars, there's a little bit of detail changes on the Gen 2 Carrera Cup cars, or Cup cars, should I say. They have a slightly different interior, quite a bit more horsepower, and you probably might not have taken in what Mark was saying to Joe about them having to have a restrictor. They would be very quick in a straight line if they didn't have that restrictor on them. They've got, I think, Porsche admitted to 30 horsepower more, and every single driver I said, so 30 horsepower, and they laughed in my face. And I said, oh, so not 30 horsepower. They went, oh, no, not 30 horsepower, way more than 30 horsepower they were having for chalk and cheese in terms of the power output from the flat 6 engine. There's a little bit of an aero difference, a little bit of suspension difference. They've tweaked the gearbox and how that responds, the interior of the car as well, and they have got the from the GT Le Mans, the GTE car, they've got the same safety cell access from the roof and the same seat as well now, should the worst happen. just a few tweaks on those cars for this season was the first year of those cars.
Now, one of the things we heard earlier from Shea down in the pit lane was the 84 Winward Racing Mercedes, the GT4 car, hadn't been out on circuit. It's now managed to get first. I think it's just completed its 4th or 5th lap. No, just coming up. Russell Ward back into the pits. At least it went out. That's a start, but they do have to get busy. Only just over 14 minutes remaining this session. I think he was the first one out in the car. We've got a car coming in very slow. Is that going out of the pits very slowly? Coming in very slowly, I think.
Yeah, I think
it's going behind the...
it's just a 24
it's
car.
It's a 24 car. I tell you why it looked very slowly. It's the Cool Racing car. We heard from Alexander Kwanyi not so long ago. He's just brought that in, but it was because the rest of the pit lane was so dark. But we saw it go behind the massive scoring tower, which is down by pit exit.
It's difficult, isn't it, to get a visual reference when it is so dark out there.
Well, especially if the first time it's picked up by the cameraman is against a blanket of darkness. We will, through the course of the next two days and 2 nights, work out all the points on the circuit, I hope. But right now, we're just trying to see as many cars at the moment. In fact, a lot of them are in the pits. I'd say 10 are in the pits at the moment. Quite a few cars just going out, but our timing screen's getting a lot of green on it. But Jeroen Blekemolen has put a bit of pink on it. Fastest second sector of anybody. He's already gone down to 2 minutes 9.4. Let's see what he can do. But the track conditions, they're clearly learning them.
Did you walk the track, Bruce?
I walked about half of it.
Right.
But then I walked about half of it just going vertically because I walked up the observation tower. I did not like the glass platform.
I've not been up there, Bruce. I'm not good with heights. I sort of...
I am not now. I used to be absolutely fine with them. Loved them when I was a child, but something's changed.
I almost... I semi-cured myself of my pathological fear of heights by going up Pikes Peak this year for the hill climb. But not quite. We'll talk more about the track here at COTA in a moment after we say good evening to Nick Damon.
Good evening, everybody, and more importantly, good evening to Robert Renau. Robert, 911, not a great qualifying. What happened?
For sure not a great qualifying. We qualified on 7 or 8. That's not what we expected. But tomorrow it's a long race. We finished very well last year. I think it's very hard for the car to race. We just try to stay on track tomorrow and try to do our best and try to gain some positions.
What was the problem? Why were you not quick? Because we're not used to the 911 car not being quick.
Honestly, I don't know. Well, the car feels a little bit different to the last couple of races. We don't know why, but maybe it's getting better tomorrow and maybe also in the rain on Sunday. So, well, we will see.
You're doing a lot of racing in the States now, but of course you don't get to come here for IMSA. So it's your second time here?
Yeah, it's my second time. As I told you, we won, as you know, we won last year. Normally I like the track, but today was a little bit weird.
So how much difference do you have in setup from track to track? I mean, obviously most of these events take place on circuits that are also F1 circuits, so they have a certain look to them. But are you having to do a lot of setup work each weekend?
The difference is not huge. We are always starting with a basic setup, and then we adjust the car a little bit. But it's magnificent. So, normally we're driving most of the time the same setup. For sure, you adjust the camber or toe, but that's all.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Now, there was a major breakthrough today, John. I recognised the difference between Robert and Albert. Even Alfred.
So close, Nick. Just so close.
So close to being clever.
Hoist by one's own smugness.
Hoist by your own petard.
He is unique, apart from the one who's exactly the same in the garage.
The same as him, yes.
Where do we get these pit lane people from?
I don't know, Bruce, really. Look what we've got to work with. I don't know. I really don't know.
Suddenly had a Glickenhaus car go second fastest.
Yes.
Pierre Longy's set a time. It's nowhere near Jeroen Blekemolen's time, but he's best of the rest. 2 seconds down on Jeroen's time. But it's good to see those cars, the SCGs, just looking so strong here. I'm a big fan of them. Of course, they really cut their teeth in the Nürburgring 24 hours and a lot of the VLN races. These are regular 4 and 6 hour races.
A couple of years ago at the Nürburgring for the 24.
Who was at the wheel? Was it Jeff Westphal at the time? I think we heard
Yeah.
Shea saying that earlier. He set some very quick times earlier today, but it's a different driver doing now, Piero Longhi, so sharing the love in that car.
And that manufacturer, very much a boutique manufacturer in terms of its road cars, but about to expand, have brought the old Highcroft premises up in Connecticut, which just outside of, just north of New York, right on a private airfield. And it's a fabulous circular building that used to build train turntables and the mechanisms for rotating restaurants and things like that. So it's a big round building, and Duncan Dayton's team, Highcroft Racing, used to be based out of there, and they've just taken over. I think actually they may have got the keys for that last week. Jesse Cameron on the programme, the MD of Glickenhaus.
May have just seen a bit of good news there, John.
Yes.
They unplugged the laptop that's trying to find out what's wrong with Winwood Motorsport Mercedes that had all those glitches. It looked like a fairly definite, right, the lid is
That's
closed.
it, we're done. Either that or put it back on the truck. Russell Ward still in that car. Just going back to Glickenhaus for a moment. They are the first manufacturer, boutique or otherwise, to commit to the yet unseen ACO hypercar, as they're being called, regulations. The new LMP1 regulations for 2020 will see perhaps some cars at Silverstone in the second half of the year of 2020 for that new set of regulations. They don't have to be based on a road car, but Glickenhaus have decided that they will build a road car, a road legal version of the race car, and then take it to Le Mans to compete against whoever turns up in that new category. Now, there's an awful lot of guidelines of that, around about 150 pages, but no solid regulations as yet. But Jim Cameron rather, and Jesse, his son, have already looked at it, decided that's where they want to be, and more importantly, the 20 million euros budget that has been benchmarked by the ACO as what it will take to run a couple of cars for a season, they've got sponsorship to cover that in the 2020-2021 season.
Well, I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal because it's the big unknown.
Correct.
If there were loads of other people lining up to try and do the same thing, easier to understand, but they have put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
They've gone, and I've always been a big fan of Jim Cameron and what he's doing,
yeah.
but he's taking it to another level.
It is the dream factory, that place. Those guys just absolutely... one of the questions I asked Jesse when he was on Midweek Motorsport a couple of weeks ago, go and look it up actually, it's a good listen on the big interview in the second half of the programme. I said, how does this work as a business? He went, oh, it doesn't work as a business. Of course it doesn't work as a business. This is absolutely nowhere. We don't think we're going to make huge amounts of money. We'll be lucky if we break even, but we just want to do it.
Fabulous.
And it's like, right. I do, those regulations, by the way, and I said this in the interview, and you'll understand what I mean by this. I really wish Martin Bahrain was still alive, because he'd be in there because he would be building central sections of cars that people could bolt things onto and go, there you go, lads, off you go. He'd have shelled out 10 of them by now already. We're live from trackside here at COTA, and it's Bruce Jones and John Hindhaugh in the booth. We are around about 35 minutes still to go this night session. Hope you enjoy the vision. A very slow car on the pit straight. It's BMW number, I think it's the 114 car, the Baz Schouten GR Motorsport, the endurance, the F80 endurance car. Not certain at the moment, but that was just the glimpse. We don't see much as it goes past here, but it caught my eye because it was going slowly, and it was on the track, not in the pit lane, as Mackay Snow comes into the pit lane in the Wright Motorsports Porsche right in front of us. But if that car doesn't get back up to speed, that is an issue as it's going up the hill. We'll have to keep an eye open for that.
Well, this is Baz Schouten at the wheel. He's sharing that with three teammates this weekend. Fellow Dutchman Ted van Vliet, Martin Lanting and Voort Sluis, Belgian driver. But certainly it just caught my eye. Sometimes something is different to the norm, and it was just
exactly right.
Lights coming from our right-hand side in the commentary position. And we realised it was out on track. Quickly looked behind the timing screens. I think John was right that it was the 114 Baz Schouten into JR Motorsport BMW. We will let you know as soon as we can, but slow it was going.
Yes, absolutely right.
We just had changes at the top of the timing screens, but no, still, there it is at a halt.
Pit lane exit, I think, for that car. Yellow flags are out at the start and finish.
He's gone past the end of the pit wall,
and
I think,
rolled
and
it back as
rolled
well.
it back down the hill, because he's not going to get up the slope. It's a very steep climb, not as steep as it is at the Red Bull Ring up to the first corner, but still gets some heat into the back of your calves.
So the Red Bull Ring is steeper than this?
I think so.
Wow. I've driven past the Red Bull Ring, but I was in such a hurry. I think it was still the Österreich Ring in the days that I drove past it. I was in such a hurry I didn't have time to stop, which rather is annoying because it's kind of fallen out of favour, that car. You spot on, Bruce, it is that car that has rolled to driver's left. It's on the red painted part of the track, so it's not actually on the pit lane exit. There's still plenty of room for people to get through, and yeah, the Red Bull Ring's rather fallen out of favour. I'm not certain why, to be honest, but a lot of series aren't going there anymore.
But I tell you what, you know, I used to go there when it was the A1 ring, but since Red Bull invested so much money, the facilities there, I'm not necessarily talking about the pit garage, but if you want some of the ultimate areas for corporate hospitality and just the quality of the buildings, like a very fancy hotel that you have to go into on the outside point of the circuit. You can go up to the top. On one side, you can look down towards the scene of the 1964 Austrian Grand Prix on the Zeltweg airfield circuit, and then all around its mountains. And you can see probably 60–70% of the circuit from the top balcony.
I've heard a little rumour, and it is only a little rumour, and this rumour does surface from time to time, that one of the reasons it's dropping off some of the calendars is they want to do fewer events because they have had their planning permission approved to reinstate a longer version of the circuit.
And the longer version of the circuit, I accidentally turned in the wrong way to a car park a couple of years ago, going to European Le Mans Series round with Johnny Palmer, and I suddenly thought, I'm on the old part of the circuit. It's completely untouched. There were parking cars on it, so I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, and I drove all the way up to where it rejoins at the Ramus curve, which is turn 3, effectively, where it goes sharp right at the top of the hill. But just trying to picture the images in my mind with the Brabhams in 1975 that looked so fantastic and went so well in the hands of Carlos Reutemann in particular. Joe Bradley will remember that very well indeed around the Österreich Ring. I transported myself back to there, but you're going through summer meadows, flowers everywhere, trees in the distance, mountains beyond. John, go there. Doesn't matter what's not there.
I need to go and do that. The 114 BMW has been taken out of harm's way. Meantime, in the pit lane, Shea Adam has found a former, in fact, I think the first female champion in IMSA in the modern era, and that would be Melanie Snow, who won GTC a few years ago.
And I was quite surprised to see Melanie Snow in the garage of the Wright Motorsports crew, because you have 2 boys racing this weekend. One of them became a 2-time champion of IMSA in the same year today, so congratulations, Madison. But as you pointed out, he's following in your footsteps yet again. You did the same thing. When was it?
In 2009, I did the GT3 and GTC championship, but not sure it counts because the GTC was a partial year. But I have to tell Madison and tease him a little bit that he's following in my footsteps.
It counts to us. It was a championship. Now, you're here at Circuit of the Americas watching McKay. He's been out of the race car for a long time, but he's clearly just as fast as he left off. It was Dubai in January. That was his last race. What's he been doing since then?
He's been at school studying engineering, so he hasn't been able to be in a car. So it was really fun that he was able to join and hop back in with Wright Motorsports and get back in the car. And yeah, he hopped back right up to speed, so I was pretty proud of him.
It's nice to be with a familiar team, to see all the crew guys walking around. It's everybody that you guys know from such a long time ago. Different experience than when he ran in Cup 1 last year?
It's a different experience, but he has ran with this series before, and we love the Creventic series. It's just more relaxed, and they enjoy it, and they have a really good time. It's fun, but it's also good competition. And of course, with being with Wright Motorsports, you know, everyone at the racetrack's family, and we love just hooking back up with them, so it's a great time.
Can we please have an all-snow car at one of these races someday? You, Martin, McKay, and Madison?
I have asked for that. I've kind of pushed for it. McKay, he's so easygoing. He's like, yeah, I'd totally do it. You'll get good again, Mom. You can get in the car. Madison tells me I'm too slow, forget it. And Martin says he's not getting back in a car, so I don't think it'll happen.
We're 50% of the way there. We'll get working on that in the off season. Thanks, Melanie, and enjoy the race.
All right, thank you.
Melanie Snow, part of the snow racing dynasty. Glickenhaus in the pit lane, getting a bit of work on the brakes to the left front of that car before the Hankook goes back on. That's the white car. That's the AM car, isn't it? The white one. The Lightspeed car is the yellow one. Have I got them the wrong way around? Lightspeed's the AM car, the 704, and the 705 is the Pro car. So
that's quite confusing. When you look at the number of the door, it says 705 in the background and 49 written atop.
Yes, it does.
Try and help us, please.
See, that's what happens when you have those, what are they called? Photovoltaic number panels, and they've had 705 on that car for presumably that would have been the Nürburgring 24, and it's been on for so much darkness there that it's burned into it like an image on an LCD television screen. So we have to keep our eyes open for that. So if we see 705, we know it's 49.
Right, we've had qualifying, we've had practice, we've had qualifying. We're in night practice. Adam Christodoulou looks on the timing screen. He's winding up to the fastest lap of all. He's top of the time charts now, a lap of 2 minutes 8.8 seconds, which is 0.6 of a second better than we've seen from Jeroen Bleekemolen, the number 2 Black Falcon Mercedes. But of course, drivers do this. They toy with us, John, because they set quick times and then don't complete the lap. They come into the pit lane. That is where Adam Christodoulou is. But certainly the Pro Sport Performance team has very much enjoyed having the un-Brit on board this weekend.
But just look how tight those gaps are at the top of the field in terms of the times. On a 2 minute and 8 second, 2 minute and 10 second lap, we are talking literally fractions of a second.
Yeah, and this is night practice. It's just worth reiterating. We've had the practice for the Code 60. That delayed them all at the start of the session. But this session is about the drivers finding their turning in points in the dark, but it's also going through all the drivers. And some of these cars have got 5 drivers on board this weekend. You go out, you do your minimum number of laps and come in. So in terms of really going for a quick time, it's not an issue. The fact they're so close just goes to show how good it could be.
Remember, 40 kilometres an hour in the pit lane, code 60 kilometres an hour, and basically walking pace once you get into the fueling area. No fueling in the pits here. For those of you perhaps joining us for the first time who aren't au fait with the regulations and you wonder why nobody's got any fireproofs on in the pit lane, that's because there is no fuel in the pit lane. All the fueling is done in a central point, which here is at pit out, behind and in the paddock. Large, very American bright red fire truck sitting, hopefully not to be used down there. And I think there are 10 pumps this weekend. Certainly there are 8. I went by and counted them earlier on, but I couldn't work out how many there were on one of the stands. So part of the tactics here, not just making sure you get the best out of your drivers, but pitting at a time when you don't have to sit in a queue for your fuel fill.
You see people getting it right, you see people getting it wrong, you see people going down towards the refueling at pit exit, seeing it's full and going, I'm not going to lose any more time if I go and do another lap. So it's a roll of the dice. Rolling the dice very well is the Black Falcon team, now top of the charts. The number 2 car, Lucas Stoltz, taking it over, just banged in a 2 minute 8.0 second lap. But the sister car, number 3, I just noticed on the timing screen, team manager car number 3 to go and see race stewards immediately.
Okay. Whilst we will find out what's happening with that, let's welcome back Nick Damon, who is with Cyril Ayari.
Cyril, it's a big weekend for you, team managing, and finally they've let you have a go in the car, the 908.
Well, you say that because you are a young boy. I used to drive before team managing.
Thank you so much. No one ever called me young before.
Yes, it's the last race of the season, and we had one driver not able to come. So, okay, we decided that I will not team manage, but drive. So I did a bit of team managing at the beginning, but now I'm only focused on the driving because it's a long time I didn't drive a front wheel car, and I don't know COTA. So 2 new things, it's a lot. So I don't team manage, I just drive.
We know a lot about the exploits of your brother's driving. I mean, how successful was your career?
Shit.
That's apologies for that. Not very good. Thanks, Cyril. Thanks, mate.
Sarah Ciari, double duty this weekend with his normal team managing duties as well as getting behind the wheel. I wonder if that'll give him a slightly different view on the team management side of things. 890 is back out again. This was the car that was stranded early on in the pit lane exit, but it's only got one headlight at the moment. The right front headlight is on, the left front headlight is not, although it has got a driving light underneath there. That is not ideal here. You really want as much light as possible facing forward. Light behind for people to see you is kind of all right, but what you need is light facing forward. Mark Carr's V8 just getting passed by the Audi number 152, I think that was, which was Seth Thomas in the Zorg Rennsport machine. Third in TCR at the moment. The TCR cars really, really impressive around here. And interesting, oh, big lock up from that car. That's unusual to see on the ABS-equipped Audis.
You've got to try quite hard to do that.
He's not running with his driving lights on either. So he's got his normal headlights on, but he hasn't got his LED additionals on.
Well, that's probably why he didn't see the braking point properly and suddenly realised that he was looking at a different part of Texas that he should have been, and managed to get it all done together. That's probably his first flying lap, I would suggest.
Oh, another big lock-up down at the end of the back straight as well. He has found the switch, though, for the extra LED headlights, which makes such a huge difference. That pure white light really allows you to... Well, two things. It allows you to use the headlights of the cars in a different way. So you have the LED lights providing a big spread of light, whereas you can have the headlights picking out either the curbs or your brake markers.
Just saw the two Black Falcon Mercedes, number 2 and number 3. They're first and third fastest. They look as though they're very measured, might have even got through all of their driver rotations because the cars were sitting in the pit lane. No need to put any more stress on them if they can get away with it. And I think we will see quite a few teams, once they've done their business, they're not going to risk the cars any more than they need to, and they will bring them in. But of course, Sean Breslin runs a very, very tight ship at Black Falcon Motorsport. Probably doesn't want to give them any more tyres. So that is why they're sitting in the pit lane. But fastest and third fastest shows they're very well placed indeed. Lucas Stoltz and Mike Skeen were the last two drivers on board.
Let's go to have a word with Jelmer Berman. The night practice continues for another 21 minutes. Get as many drivers in front of the camera and in front of our microphones as we can. Nick Damon.
Jelmer, until 2 seconds ago, both cars are parked nicely outside. I take it Black Falcon have achieved what they want to do and you can have an early start.
Yeah, well, I think we're still going out, so just trying something. Obviously, the night here is quite short with the break, so it's not so much, doesn't make so much sense to really try and tune the setup as well for the night, because it's only dark for such a short time. So we're focusing mainly on day, but then still some other things you can try. Even though the practice sessions were quite long, there's always stuff you'd like to try. So that's what we're doing now, and then then it's finished.
How do you sum up qualification? Were you surprised to see the Aston Martin faster than your cars?
Well, they have a very strong car over one lap, this we know, and I mean, in the end, they had a good driver in it as well. So we were surprised that the gap was this big. But on the other side, we for sure knew they were a threat, basically. So anyway, it's a very long race. And we'll be starting from the front row. And yeah, let's see how the start goes. Maybe we can catch them in the first corner. For sure, that would be good, because overtaking the Aston Martin is extremely difficult, as it has quite a bit of a top speed advantage over us. We're strong in the high-speed corners, but they are just mega quick in a straight line. So let's see what we can do.
You mentioned you're going to go out and try something. How are you setting the car up for the race? Is it neutral? Is it slightly understeer? What's best for a long run?
Well, obviously you want a car that's not too much on edge. It also depends on the drivers. Like some drivers, they like a car which is a little bit understeery, just because it gives them a bit more the safety feeling, you know, it's a bit more comfortable. But I think we all like a car which is obviously not too lazy, not too much understeer, but also not too much oversteer. So it's quite a fine balance, but I think we've achieved that. So the car felt really good today, and we're confident going into the race with the car we had. So
yeah, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Joe Bradley sitting in the booth with us. That was Nick Damon down in the pit lane. Be interested just to see what Black Vulcan can do. They're first and third at the moment. And the question there, Bruce, about balancing the car between the drivers, this is a compromise that has to be learned, particularly to younger drivers maybe coming in from a single-seater background where they're used to it being all about them and not even sharing data with the other side of the garage, their teammate. Now they have 2, 3, sometimes 4 teammates, and they've got to face the reality that perhaps the car won't be perfect for any one of them.
No, entirely. In that particular number 3 Mercedes from Black Fork, when we heard from Jelmer Burman, who has so much experience of racing the AMG GT3 Mercedes, but for Mike Ski and Scott Heckert and Brad Curtis, they're not so near to the top of the learning curve. And of course, if it was just Jelmer in the car, he would have that car set up that in a way that it probably wouldn't handle it they would like as much as he does, because he'd be very, very capable of putting it right on the edge. But it's about the 4 of them having something they can go and play with. But Jelmer, because he's driven them so much, is able to suggest so many things that would ways that would change the car, that would make it more suitable for more of the lap than if they were just coming in and doing it themselves. So it's all about just understanding the cars, and nothing beats experience. And of course, Jelmer has that in bucket loads.
And if necessary, he has to defer to sometimes his teammates who they might want it slightly more. He might have to change his driving style, or at least, if not change it, adapt it a little bit. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Still 17 minutes to go. Let's head down to Hyundai. Great news that the new Veloster TCR, Veloster N TCR, will be heading into IMSA competition with Brian Hurt at Autosport. But of course, we've been watching the i30 for quite some time. Made its endurance debut at Silverstone in the 24 hours last year. And Nick Damon is down in the Hyundai pit now.
With Soren Jonsson. Soren, you've had a year now running with that Hyundai. How much has it improved in that year?
A lot of things have been improved. We can see that it is really it is the first endurance car at all. So there's a lot of things we have to learn. We have to learn about the car, but we can see that the car is very, very, very fast. We can say that the BOP right now, that is not for our good, because we have the highest weight in the TCR class, we have the highest riding height, and we have also less power. We are driving with 97.5 in the horsepower. So it's really, but we can see when we are driving out there, the performance for the car is fantastic.
And I mean, are you still unlocking lots of new performance each time?
Yeah, for sure. We were driving the first race on Silverstone. This race is our third 24 hours race. It was very good on the Barcelona, and we can see that we are improving each time. But there's a lot of things to which can also be better. We have changed the rear dampers today from the qualifying, and we can see in the night practice here the car is much better to drive.
Are you going? Obviously, the Hyundai are having a bit of a twin-pronged TCR attack. Over here in IMSA, they're going to have the Veloster. Are you going to stick with the i30, or are you going to move to the Veloster next year?
No. We've continued with the i30 because the Veloster, that is for the American market, and the i30 is for, you can say, for the European market. And with Hyundai Denmark as the main sponsor, we're continuing with the i30.
Okay, continue developing and hopefully get a BOP break. Great stuff. Thank you, Soren.
We hope so.
Thanks, Soren.
That's a really good effort, that. And backed, as you heard there, Soren saying, by Hyundai Denmark. The Veloster N, not heading to many parts of Europe. I think Australia are getting it. China, Korea and Japan, and here in the States, but not in the UK or Europe. But the fact that the Danish arm of Hyundai, the importers, are getting behind that in an endurance situation. That's really good, and those guys have worked hard to help develop that car into a thoroughly impressive endurance car, as well as it's been I mean, it won the Manufacturers' Championship here. Brian Hurt Autosport won the Manufacturers' Championship with it in the World Challenge here with the i30. But developing it into an endurance car is not the work of a moment.
No, it's not, John. And with, of course, the suitability for a 1-hour race or a 45-minute race, completely different game. But I think if any nation would do it, it is the Danes. They've been out in such strength in the Creventic series over the years, how long are our races? Up to 24 hours, 12 hours, 24. And I think they can see the popularity of getting more and more people to try a TCR car. When I was out on the circuit this afternoon, I was looking, they just handle so well. Watch them go through the S's, turns 3, 4, 5, 6, really, really well balanced. And actually, it amazed me at one point, one of the Lamaras came through and was all over the place, but I think that was driver issue rather than anything else. But again, the Danes have always loved their long distance racing, and anyone in the last 15 years or so turned up the TK factor at Le Mans is just extraordinary. We always thought there were a lot of Brits going down, but the Danes just have that enormous campsite.
Magnussen as well.
And Jan and a whole host of other drivers.
And let's be honest, you know, when the Seats, as they were then, first started doing the long distance races, they weren't entirely reliable. It's taken a couple of 3 years for VAG to get an endurance kit, or for people like Blekemolen Racing and the guys at Bas Kouten Racing to get a handle on these cars and make them a more reliable and wieldy endurance racing machine. So, you know, in racing car terms, the i30 is, or the i30N is in its first flush of youth.
No, it's very true, but don't forget, a couple of years ago we saw the RS3 Audi arrive straight out of the box. Yes. The order book was filling up by the lap, I would suggest, in the Dubai 24 Hours that year, because it just hit the ground running and just took TCR to a new level. And they have sold a whole host of those ever since. So the market is there if you can get it just right. And of course, with sort of global entity of TCR, it's becoming more and more attractive for manufacturers to go out and play. But the fact is, you can have 4 or 5 of them out here racing in events like this. Just shows what a great little car it is.
If you are just joining us for the last 10 minutes or so of night practice, we had qualifying earlier on, and in the race tomorrow, Aston Martin have captured pole position with the R Motorsport number 620. R Motorsport, the people who will be behind the DTM effort with an Aston Martin lookalike car, the silhouette of a new Vantage, plonked onto a chassis of another manufacturer with another manufacturer's engine. And they'll be, alongside them will be Black Falcon with the number 2 car. Row 2 will be the 3 Black Falcon Mercedes, and then the Lightspeed Racing 704, which is the Glickenhaus machine. Those are split between A6 Pro and AM, so that's AM Pro, Pro AM in as far as the first 2 rows. On all AM Row 3 with SPS Automotive, the 24 Mercedes, and then the similar car of Pro Sport Performance, the 85 car, in 6th. 7th and 8th, the 911 Porsche A6 Pro, the 34 Car Collection Motorsport Audi in 8th position, and the top 10 and the rest of the A6 category, the 41 HB Racing Ferrari 488 GT3, and the A6 Pro, the second of the Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus SC G003Cs. Best of the 911s and 11th, Wright Motorsports Porsche 911 Gen 2 car with a 212.246, and remember that's running restricted here to keep the top speed down. JDX Racing about a second, 1.2 seconds off from that. SP2 Lamara Cup capturing the TCE pole position effectively for that with the number 60 car, and JR Motors behind them in 2nd place. Rentec Motorsports have the GT4 pole position, and Winwood Motorsports in 2nd place. Sorry, the Lamara Cup on the SP2 pole, but in TCE the pole position was captured by the other Lamara Cup car, the 238 from SP3 category. That was a bit of a turn up for the books there, ahead of the massed ranks of the TCRs, led by LMS Racing, by Bas Kouten Racing with their Cupra, the Volkswagen GTI TCR. That's got the sequential box rather than the DSG, by the way, that the Cupra's got. That's the Lestrup Racing team, the 110 car in third. Fourth, NKPP Racing by Bas Kouten Racing with another one, the Cupra DSGs. And Cup 1, Hoffa Racing by Bock Motorsports, BMW taking the pole position there. The guys en route, they hope, to the champion of the continent title, which will be decided on Sunday. Tight all of the standings there in both GT and in TCE. If you want all the details, go to 24hseries.com, www.24h, that's 24hseries.com. Last 8 minutes, no massive dramas, fortunately, so it looks like a relatively early night for most of the teams, Bruce.
Yeah, we've got probably, I'd say 2/3 of the entries are now parked up in the pits, handful out on the track. For those out there, in fact, they might find it even darker than before, because when you have more cars on the track, there are more headlights. If you're suddenly there during a period where all's gone quiet, everyone's scrambled to the pits for whatever reason, you just find the track has redefined itself. Fastest time at the moment, it's the number 3 Black Falcon car. In fact, Jelmer Berman, we saw the 2 Black Falcon Mercedes sitting at the end of the pit lane, but not looking to go out. And then just as soon as Nick started speaking to Jelmer Berman, one went out. But Mike Skeen just set the fastest time in the session so far. Hasn't had much of a racing agenda this year, but he's raced many things, including racing in Europe for an HTP Motorsport Mercedes team last year. This year not so busy, but he just lapped in 2 minutes 7.7. That puts him just around 0.3 of a second faster than Lucas Stoltz in the sister car. But really, as John pointed out, just a handful of cars on the track at the moment. This session winding down ahead of racing tomorrow.
Nick Damon was listening to us talk about the TCRs there, the number 110 Volkswagen doing well and will start well up that grid. Nick?
With Mats Olsen. Mats, just saw you being pushed backwards down the pit lane. Was that anything sinister, or you just gone to get a bit of fuel?
I think they want the total amount of fuel in the tank for the race tomorrow. So I was not allowed to drive an extra lap.
So how has the car gone so far? Is the team happy with today's work?
I think we are very happy, yes. Everything had got well, and what we had thought about. And this night practice was a little bit scary for me, because of the couple of last races I haven't managed to drive in the night. But here was good, no problem at all.
How do you feel the Golf compares to the Audis, the other TCR cars?
Yeah, I have no experience of the other cars, but I'm satisfied, pleased with this car. It's very, very good to drive. And I can't see that there is anything wrong with the car. It must be behind the wheels if there is anything wrong.
How are the team enjoying the Circuit of Americas?
We are enjoying it very good, very good, very good, yes. A very interesting track, and it's have a different type of corners, and you have to manage slow corner, fast corner, and double corner, and everything you have to manage here. So it's very, very nice track, must I say.
Nice, thank you so much. And just to my right, at the 890 pit, that's the Mercedes GT4, it's Shea Adam.
It's been a very difficult night practice for our GT4 pole sitters. They had that incident at the beginning of practice where they brought out the caution, or the local yellow, and never really figured out what was troubling the car. They managed to get 4 of their 5 drivers out for their mandatory night laps. They need 1 driver to do 2 more laps, and with just on about 5 minutes remaining in this session, and the car is still sitting in the pit lane with only 1 functioning headlamp, they're starting to get a little bit nervous. It has just left the pit lane, and they need to get in those 2 laps, and then they'll be able to sleep easy. But for right now, they're just waiting for this session to be over.
It's David Ducote at the wheel. They haven't got their side numbers illuminated either, so there's clearly an electrical issue with that car that they may have just jerry-rigged to get the car running. Only the right front headlamp working. No additional lamps other than the driving lamps in the front valance, with David Ducote running with quite a lot of light inside that car as well as he goes through to turn 1, turning in there. The the lap time's not competitive. He runs very wide at turn 1, but if you haven't got a headlight on the left-hand side, I'm not surprised. He brakes at turn 2 to allow now that was the red Mercedes to go through.
That's the number 3. That's the Elmer Berman, who just banged in the fastest lap. 2 minutes 7.673 seconds. He's now a third of a second faster. It's very good that Nick interviewed Mats Olsen, because I worked out who Mats was, because I saw him standing looking at various points around the track when I was on my track walk, but he wasn't wearing anything identifying. I could spot he was a racing driver from his level of interest, but if it's your first appearance here, that's what you got to do, Joe.
3.5 minutes to go. Let's hear from Adam Christodoulou from the Mercedes AMG pits.
Adam, the 85 Pro Sport team, they've won the European Championship. They're now going for the Championship of the Continent. You've got to help them. How was day one?
It's been going all right. So we had a bit of practice yesterday. It was my first taste of COTA. So yeah, really enjoyed the circuit. The first sector, going through all the complexes, is really fun. And today's gone pretty well as well. Qualifying didn't quite go to plan. We're starting 6th overall, so sadly just got tripped up during a few quick laps, and so yeah, we're starting 6th. But as we've proved during all the other races, we always have great race performance, and we're looking forward to doing the same again this weekend.
They say that the first sector is reminiscent of the Maggots-Beckett's complex at Silverstone. Is it like that?
Yeah, so it's very similar, except here they've got some quite nasty, like we call them sausages, like big curbs on the inside, and of course you really don't want to go anywhere near them. But the difference here is obviously it seems to be tarmac everywhere. There's no real grassy areas, so it is a little bit harder to get some of your pinpoints of where you want to be, like clip the apexes and stuff. But I've really enjoyed racing or testing and qualifying here so far. But I think the race is going to be a bit different. It seems to be very frustrating if you're stuck behind a slightly slower car, because through the complexes it's lots of lift and coast rather than powering and braking heavy. And so, of course, when you're coasting and you're going from one side of the track to the other, it makes it extremely hard to overtake even the smallest cars out there. And so traffic management is definitely going to be key for around here.
You obviously went out and did 45 minutes of as fast as you could go on fresh tyres qualifying. Have you then significantly tamed the setup for the actual night practice and the race itself?
So yeah, we have to be a little bit more cautious for the race, and generally everyone will do the same. Like, the thing is, qualifying, you can go out, you lower the car a little bit, and it'll bottom out a bit, but of course you get that little bit extra aero. In the race, it wouldn't last 24 hours if you had it like that. It doesn't matter what car you're in. So for the race, everyone generally raises it a little bit, just makes it a little bit more forgiving over some of the bumps. If you do have to like change direction to overtake some or take a bit more curb compared to normal, so you will lose a little bit of performance in the race. But saying that, actually, when it's cooler and dark like this, like the car then in the night practice felt hooked up. So the cool conditions are always great for the cars.
Adam, thanks a lot. Have a good race.
Cheers.
Thank you. Extraordinary that this is his first time here, and he was so very confident. The 74 Porsche in the hands of... I glanced up at the screen and thought I saw Alan Menu up there. It's Alan Metney, of course, the man behind iFly, who is one of the IMS Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge USA drivers that is with JDX Racing this weekend. 10th position for that 991 Gen 2 Cup car. What a great way to go endurance racing.
And their manager gets some fitness work. He's got to go and see the race director. So they've just been pinged for cutting corners or not respecting track limits, or however we choose to describe it these days. But I've been watching them through the course of practice and qualifying. They're just really winding it up very well indeed. But getting towards, is this the moment the checkered flag comes out? I think
is
we're
indeed.
at the end of the time.
Correct. Spot on time. 8:30 here in the evening at Austin, or just outside of Austin. Thank you for joining us wherever you are around the world. We'll have more sound and vision across the weekend, of course. It's been a cracking 3 sessions with free practice, qualifying, and now the night session without any massive problems for too many of the cars. 890 with a bit of a problem early on, which I'm still not sure they've got sorted out. Hoffa Racing got out there in the 131 after they had a problem earlier on. Team Hyundai Denmark, yeah, okay, they've done some laps as well. not everybody has been out there for the full session. A lot of the teams, Bruce, just deciding to sling the cars back in the garage once everybody had done their mandatory number of night laps.
Well, preloading with sleep as well, as much as you can, and of course they will get some sleep tomorrow night, or more to the point, they get to lie on a bed because there is the break in the race. Whether you can sleep because you're probably still so completely charged up by the first, well, what's the split this time? Is it 12.5, then 11.5? I think that's the split between Saturday and Sunday. I did the maths earlier, took my shoes off, used my toes.
Excellent.
Worked it all out.
But it was 14:10 last year.
Yes. Teams might find, well, there might be a minor difference between those, but we all know just a few degrees of temperature change can be the biggest difference for the teams, the way the cars handle, the way the drivers feel.
The one thing that I thought last year that I would have done different is that I would have stayed at the track and slept at the track rather than going back to the hotel and coming back in again. Because unless you're right on the doorstep of the track, the 45 minutes or, you know, half an hour each way or whatever you spend, that's time you could have been just even relaxing with your eyes closed, and that would have made a bit of a difference. It's about a half moon here at Austin, Texas, and we have completed the first official day of competition for the final round of the Championship of the Continents. It's the 24-hour GT Series and the 24-hour TCE Series finale for 2018 in the Powered by Hankook Series, and as the TCE practice goes, after night practice, the Lamera Cup underlining its pole position in TCE will start about 50 seconds behind the GT field. I'll be joined on the front row by, well, behind it will be a whole plethora of TCR cars, and that's exactly how it's turned out tonight. Court Racing was the fastest SP3 car down in 9th position, and the Hoffa Racing, powered by Bonk Motorsport 235 Cup, led the Cup class car, with Team Hyundai Denmark and Zog Rennsport in 11th and 12th position. As far as the GT times this evening go, a very respectable 2 minutes 7.673 for Black Falcon, the number 3 car, and they've got first and second here. That's not how the qualification went. Our Motorsport with the Aston Martin will take pole position and therefore lead the cars around to the green flag. But for this evening, Black Falcon showing great strength in the darkness, and right up there with them, Lightspeed Racing with the ARM version of the ARM driving team of the Glickenhaus 003C. That's the 704, that's the yellow car. The Pro Sport Performance, Adam Christodoulou taking that car to 4th position. The Mercedes beginning to gather towards the top, but Herbert Motorsport, having only qualified down towards the bottom of the top 10, with a little better showing tonight, but they'll want to move forward from their grid position and even from their 6th position start tonight. Nice to see the Ferrari in the top 10, along with our pole sitter tomorrow, our Motorsports Aston Martin V12, 9th position for them tonight, and the best of the 991 class cars. Remember, these are the Porsche Cup class cars in 10th position this evening. Car Collection Motorsport have the Audi in 11th, second of the 991 2-Cup cars in 12th position. SP2 in 13th and 14th, with the Mark Focus V8 won't start in their best position in SP2, but was right up there with the Lamera Cup. That is the pole sitting car in SP2. Still slight question marks maybe over the GT4 of Windward Racing HTP Motorsport. They had a bit of an electrical problem earlier on. The lap truck was plugged in and then that car sent out. SP2, GR Motorsport and Speed Lover a little bit further down, as well as Brookspeed International. Winners of the GT4 category last year, with the Cayman sitting down in 20th position. And the rest of the results in the GT category sees Perfection Racing Europe's Ginetta and Rentec Motorsport. Now, Rentec were the one who went out at the start of the session. The car didn't get up the hill, and then they clearly had some electrical problems with the car that prevented it getting back up to speed. So that's the qualifying and the night practice completed, and we've had some great action here today. Thanks for being with us. Hope you've enjoyed us, and we'll be back with the whole of the race live tomorrow. I reckon we'll have somewhere in the region of 6, maybe 6.5 hours of darkness running, so that nighttime practice particularly important. Our race coverage gets underway tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock local time. Make sure you join us for that. We'll have all the build-up from the grid and the first part of the race, which will take us into darkness, then a reset and back on Sunday morning an hour earlier than last year. So that's going to be interesting and a bit slippery. But don't worry, you won't miss any of the action. Thanks to all of our production team on site, as well as Joe, Nick and Shay in the pit lane. John Hindhaugh and Bruce Jones were in the booth with you tonight, and the responsible adult, well, was everywhere. We'll see you tomorrow for the race start as we find out who will be the champions of the continent for 24 Hour GT and 24 Hours TCE Series powered by Hankook.